Good morning, almost afternoon. Thank you for joining me at Disorder in the Court for live coverage of Nevada versus Robert Tellis in the murder of Jeff Gehrman, a investigative journalist at the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And yes, breaking news, as Solo mentions here in the chat. 5 people have been arrested in relation to the overdose deaths of Matthew Perry. I just watched part of that press conference. That is, man, it made me, it's not difficult to, hey, Patricia, I hope you're feeling better today, dear. That it made me feel a little bit emotional. I'm not going to lie to you. Listening to the DA give that press conference, because what they basically talked about was that Matthew Perry sought treatment for depression and anxiety from doctors. They prescribed a ketamine type of treatment and was overprescribed the ketamine, and at one point was being charged 1,200 or thousand, no, $2,000 for a dose that cost the doctor $12. That is fucking insane. And yeah, could Matthew Perry afford that? Oh, good. That's good, Patricia. Could Matthew Perry afford that? Sure. Is it right? Is it right to bilk anyone, to overcharge anyone for prescription medication? Hell no. Is it right to cause them to get addicted, to overprescribe them and cause them to get addicted to the extent that they need to then seek it on the street, which is what happened to him? And that's what happened to him. He had to seek street drugs, which eventually ended up costing him his life. It is absolutely tragic and can happen to anyone, obviously. So I'm glad that they're pursuing it. I'm glad that the DA made a point of saying, hey, we don't just investigate these cases in relation to famous celebrities. We do it for, they named the number of cases that they've pursued in Los Angeles, and that it has become a worldwide program. I mean, who knows how accurate that is, but at least they're trying to acknowledge that that's what they do. And by doing a press conference like that, they're basically trying to bring awareness to the idea that not only is this an issue, but also they're going to pursue justice for it. So I see it as overall a good thing, for justice, but a horrible, horrible, horrible thing for Matthew Perry. One thing that's interesting that I keep going back to as I whenever I see coverage about Matthew Perry is, do you all know that Keith Morrison is Matthew Perry's stepdad? He's been Matthew Perry's stepdad for a really long time. You know who Keith Morrison is, right? Keith Morrison is one of the longtime hosts of 48 Hours. Is it 48 Hours? Pretty sure it's 48 Hours. One of the more popular crime shows. Iconic voice of, true crime. He's an iconic voice of true crime. So I've always kind of wondered, and he's given a couple, the white-haired guy. He's given a couple of interviews about Matthew Perry. I've always kind of wondered if he ever, if he influenced at all. I'm not the type of person, I'm not a super duper conspiratorial person. I love a conspiracy when there's a lot of meat behind the conspiracy. So I'm not one that thinks that, oh, he went and pulled strings with the people he knows and made sure it got investigated. But I do believe that people with, high profile people do have more influence on those things than others, right? So we got a high profile, celebrity, and then a high profile um, investigative journalist, or, high profile uh, true crime figure who definitely works in the circles of, justice, crime and justice, who has contacts nationwide, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some sort of influence there to relook at the facts of that case. And my understanding is that Matthew Perry was quite close to his mother and to Keith Morrison. So they would have known whether he would have intentionally taken such a high dose that would have caused his death and drowning, caused such a high dose that he would have drowned in his own hot tub. So anyway, very tragic. Yeah, he seems I have no reason to believe that he's not a stand-up guy. I mean, I've never heard anything different, but you never know. You never, I don't know. Never heard anything different. He seems like a really good guy. And Matthew Perry, he was, up until he got clean and wrote his book and did his book tour, basically his troubles seemed to be mainly centered around being an addict, addictive behavior, and the troubles that center around that, and I admired him for being such a public advocate for, well, recovery and well-being, because he really, really, really struggled, and he was so honest and vulnerable about it. Okay, so here they come. It's interesting how late this court starts. I mean, I'm not complaining at all, but I don't think I've ever seen a court that starts at 11 o'clock. I have a question for you and Kat. Are you, any of you listening or watching the Wade, no, I'm sorry, the Wade Wilson stuff, like the
Hey, good morning. Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel? Yes, Your Honor. And the defense?
camera guy.
Okay, is Detective Mogg here? He's outside. All right, I'll start so we can bring the witness back in, and Mr. Draskovich can begin his cross-examination. Yeah.
The court is almost as filled up as it was yesterday. By the way, Patricia, just letting you know that yesterday's video was absolutely and completely blocked worldwide because I showed that because I showed that opening ceremony coverage. And at first it looked like there was going to be no way to remedy it, but I figured out how to remedy it. But lesson learned, I'm never doing that again. Oh no, it's not your fault. I made the choice. I knew what the potential consequences could be. I wanted to see it. So this will probably be cross-examination. Maybe.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
We'll see.
Clifford, Clifford, Mogg, Mogg.
Thank you. Good morning, Detective Mogg.
Morning, Mr. Draskovich.
And we'll stop right there. It's obviously not detective. I know old habits die hard. You've since retired. Now you're a private investigator.
I'm not a private investigator. I'm
private
a consultant. Correct.
Fair. All right. Turning your attention to your testimony at the end of yesterday. The locations of interest, and this was your slide that I'm referring to. I believe it's slide 7. You were primarily focused on this 5.3 mile trip, give or take, between Mr. Garman's residence and the residence belonging to Mr. Telles, correct?
That's an approximation.
Okay. How many neighborhoods or designated neighborhoods are within, just along this route, this 5.3 mile distance?
Numerous.
Fair to say hundreds.
I wouldn't know if it was hundreds, but yes.
You had given testimony towards the end of the day yesterday that you had driven through Mr. Telles's neighborhood, correct?
I did.
Looking for another Denali?
Examining the area, looking for vehicles, correct.
And what other vehicles would you be looking for other than a red Denali?
We were advised that Mr. Tejas also had 2 other vehicles. I believe one is a BMW, the other one was a Tesla. And so we drove the area. I believe at the time that I drove through, I can't recall if both the BMW, the Tesla, and the Tahoe were at his residence or not, but those were the vehicles we knew that he had access to.
Okay, and in reference to this 5.3 mile route, which you had reviewed approximately 20 cameras on, did you review that route for the BMW?
No, we did not.
Did you review that route for the Tesla?
We did not.
So then back to Mr. Telles's neighborhood, you'd agree with me that when you drove through Mr. Telles's neighborhood, you were looking for a red Denali similar to his?
I was looking for all the vehicles that were registered to him.
Approximately how many houses were in his specific neighborhood?
Oh, rough guess, maybe 100-ish. It's kind of a looped neighborhood.
Do you recall the name of the neighborhood?
I do not.
Do you recall the subdivision to which this neighborhood belonged?
I can't recall off the top of my head the name of the subdivision.
Do you recall whether or not it was in, let's say, Lake Las Vegas, Piccoli Ranch, Summerlin?
I believe it might have been Piccoli Ranch area. That's what's right there on Charleston.
Are you aware of what, or any HOAs that had jurisdiction, assuming there was, over this neighborhood?
I'm not.
You had given testimony concerning, and I'll flip through so we can all see. It's your slide 15. (9:10), and you had given testimony yesterday at about 4:12 p.m. that you had seen this red Denali entering this area near where Mr. Telles lived, correct?
At approximately 9:10 in the morning, that's correct.
And just so we're clear, at 9:10 from this camera that it was 9601 Red Hills Drive, basically the Piggott Elementary School, you saw the Denali arriving in the neighborhood, not specifically to Mr. Telles's house, but the area, correct?
It drove into the neighborhood where Mr. Tejas lives.
And he was arriving, assuming, and that's again too, we don't know who was driving, do we?
That's correct.
Throughout your testimony yesterday, you repeatedly said he, the driver, he. We don't know, all things being you, whether it was a he or a she, do we?
I'm fairly confident it was a male.
Okay, but you didn't know. You don't know. You can't testify today whether it was a male or a female, can you?
Not positively.
But back to this arrival, whoever's driving this Denali at 9:10:18 DVR time on September 2nd, 2022, do you know where that Denali was arriving from, or where its place of origin is from?
Well, I looked at phone records from Mr. Tejas. And I know that earlier in the morning, previous to 9:10, he was down in the area of, I believe it was Desert Inn and Durango. There's a school down there in that neighborhood.
Okay. But again, not based upon any captures from any ring cams, school cams, gas station cams. That's based upon his cell phone data, correct?
That's correct. The camera at his residence did not record, and there wasn't anything on the ring camera of evidentiary value.
And we'll get to that. But just so we're clear though, as far as where this vehicle was, we don't know, do we? We have no records concerning that red Denali prior to 9:10 a.m.
That's correct.
We don't know the location of this red Denali on September 1st, the day before, do we?
I do not.
And we don't know the location of this red Denali following, let's say, 9/3, do we?
I believe there were
Oh, thank God.
surveillance
Topper here.
units set up on
Thank
that
you,
vehicle
Topper.
at some point after 9/2, but I don't recall the exact date.
Let me ask you this. Are you aware of Mr.
people
Tellis
in the
being
background
under
there?
surveillance prior to this date in question, September 2nd, 2022?
No,
At this point in time, you worked with the homicide unit?
that's correct.
So you were unaware of what other involvement, if any other units may have had concerning details concerning Mr. Tellis?
I know there were other units in the Metropolitan Police Department that were involved in an investigation concerning Mr. Tejas, but I don't know the details concerning that investigation.
Are you aware of a surveillance detail that had been focused on Mr. Tellis on the days preceding this killing of Mr. Garum?
I am not.
Are you aware that he was subject to surveillance on the day of this killing of Mr. Garing?
I am not.
The next slide I'd like you to turn your attention to is, so let's see. We'll go here. It's at 9:12. This is where you discussed roughly the same time Mr. Gehrman is leaving the taco shop. Again, you'd said that the time was wrong in this, correct?
That's correct. The clock time on the DVR is wrong. I believe this is, I'd have to go back and look at the previous slide, but probably somewhere around 9:14 in the morning.
Okay, and you were shown a receipt by Mr. Hamner concerning a receipt.
I don't think I was shown a receipt.
Okay, was there any discussion with you and Mr. Hamner concerning your receipt from Roberto's Taco Shop on the morning in question?
No, I know that one existed. That's how we ended up going there. That was found during a search of Mr. Gurman's residence. And so that's one of the reasons that we went to the taco shop, is to follow up on the time of that receipt. And I believe, if memory serves me correctly, the time on the receipt was about 9:04.
And are you aware of that receipt and the timestamp on the receipt being accurate, or is it just an assumption that it was?
Based on the adjusted time on the DVR, I think the time was pretty accurate, but I can't testify that it absolutely was accurate.
All right. Now moving on. This is a 9/12/32. This is from the same 906 Red Hills Drive, the Piggott Elementary, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your testimony yesterday was at this time we see this Denali leaving this area, correct?
Yes, sir.
But just so we're clear, the last point of either seeing this vehicle arriving or leaving, this is about as close as we get to the Tellis residence, correct?
It is.
But still, we have a distance, don't we? I mean, it's not right around the corner, but I mean, there's a distance between this camera and Mr. Tellis's home.
Where I lose track of the Denali as it heads north, it's right around the corner from Mr. Tejas' residence.
And, you know, since we're on the subject, I'll just address this right now. This surveillance camera. the Ring camera, Mr. Telles's home security cameras. It's your testimony that you could not find any video from that day, correct?
That's correct. If any video would have been recovered, it would have been provided to me so that I could have used it in my PowerPoint. I know that detectives at the scene who were executing the search warrant there, in addition to myself, requested that our digital forensics lab come out and examine the DVR. I don't know what the results of that examination are.
So you're not able to give testimony whether it was cloud-based or not?
I am not.
You're not aware of whether the passcode had been given to it and followed through?
All I know is that the digital forensics detectives came out, and they're the ones that examined the system.
So they would know in reference to that system versus you, fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And you're not aware of when any security system may have been installed, whether it was the day before on the Tellus residence, are you?
I am not.
Are you aware of any other neighbors of Mr. Tellus who had been spoken to concerning their Ring cameras or their security systems that could have gotten you closer to the Tellus home?
I am aware that other detectives canvassed the area for surveillance video, and I don't believe we were able to locate any.
But you can't say for certain, can you?
Well, I can say that if video would have been recovered, it would have been given to me to be used as part of the PowerPoint that I created.
But again, and just so we're clear, and if I may approach this screen, I mean, we've got the Piggott Elementary School here. That's where the green pen is, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we have the Tellus home up here, a ways away on the other side of Spanish Steps, correct?
Correct.
So you said it was right around the corner, but it's actually really not. You have to leave Piggott Elementary School, come over here on Red Hills, drive up Red Hills, let's see, Silk Tassel, hit Spanish Steps. And from this picture, we can't really see, but we don't really have the entrance to Mr. Tellus's neighborhood captured, do we?
So where I lose track of the Dolly is about 6 houses south of the intersection, and then right around the corner to Mr. Teaz's residence.
Would you agree with me, just based upon this capture, and this presumably is from a satellite?
The picture of this?
Yes.
Yes, it's Google Earth.
We've got quite a few homes. We've got that Silk Tassel Drive. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on one side, 6 on the other. Then we have Spanish Steps. We have homes on each side. There's a lot of homes there, isn't there, that could have security cameras?
There were, but not every home has security cameras. And just because you have a camera doesn't mean that it captures anything.
Kind of like in the instance of Mr. Tellus's home, just because the camera, that doesn't mean anything was captured, correct?
That's correct.
But fair to say, we do have several homes between this Piggott vantage point and the Tellus home.
There are several, yes.
You had given testimony concerning seeing a red Denali drive by from a certain vantage point, and you weren't able to see whether or not it had a plate, correct?
That's correct.
Do you recall which capture you were referring to?
I believe that was from 1405 Wintergreen, and there was no plate visible on the back of the truck at the time that it drove northbound on Wintergreen.
And what time was that?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Would referring to your notes or your slide preparation refresh your recollection?
If you want to back out of this and go to the PowerPoint itself, and then I have to scroll down to the slides.
Okay, I'll do this. We'll go through it together.
So it's that angle.
Right here?
No, not this, but it's this angle from 1405 Wintergreen.
Not that one.
No, sir.
That's Mr. Tellis. I'm sorry, that's Mr. Gehrman. Let's see. And since we're here in the interest of time, let's address this. You were asked, did something jump out at you? Recall that line of questioning yesterday?
Correct.
And you were shown this in State's Exhibit 317. Mr. Hamner had shown this to the jury, correct?
Yes,
We have a visor down in the summertime on a vehicle, correct?
that's correct.
And you'd said there was something telling, something very characteristic about this capture, correct?
There's one of them, yes.
And we'll get to the other matters, but you said something here on the front just showed you that this must be the same vehicle or similar to the vehicle, correct?
It stood out to me as something that was similar on both the suspect's vehicle and on Mr. Tejas' vehicle.
And if I can show you what's been admitted and shown, published, State's Exhibit 317.
Yes,
Let me approach, this was it, correct?
that's correct.
And you said in your testimonies that there's something here that matches something there concerning this light colored area?
Correct. It's just something that drew my attention on both vehicles. And it's a faded area on the plastic of the left front of the Denali.
But then again, this faded area, the sun's reflecting off of it, isn't it?
I don't believe the sun was reflecting off of that.
I would submit that the exhibit will speak for itself. If I told you that it is, do you have any reason to disagree with me?
That the sun is reflecting off of that,
Yes.
I would.
Okay, well, obviously, we'll let those that are the ultimate determiners of fact to determine that. There was other testimony concerning things jumping out at you. The rims on the Denali.
Correct.
These are stock rims, aren't they?
They are.
The tinting in the front, lighter tinting in the front, darker tinting in the back. Something else?
That's correct. When you take everything into consideration.
But that's a standard feature, is it not? The front windows are generally not tinted and the backs are.
That's not true.
Have you done research concerning the 2007 Denali?
I've seen Denalis. I've seen tinted windows in the front, tinted windows all the way around, no tint all the way around, some windows
That
tinted,
doesn't
some
seem like
windows
a
not.
standard feature.
It runs the gamut. It depends on the owner of the vehicle on whether or not you want to tint your
Let's
windows.
skip the defense.
Have you done any research in reference to like Car Guru or CarMax, Google concerning 2007 Denalis, what they
I
look
have.
like? Fairly similar to this one.
Similar, yes.
They all have Denali on the side like this Denali has, correct?
Pull
They
out
do.
the receipts, defense. Show us what you got. Show us that it's standard. I want to see this. Because I'm willing
Now,
to.
moving forward,
Oh,
please
oh.
stop me when we come to the capture.
I'm going to pause that. I'm going
Which
to
was the
pause
word
that.
used in reference.
Okay. So that was really, really weak and a definite downplay, downvote for me on the defense. PKC, when you say this guy, you mean the witness or the defendant? Oh, yeah, for sure the defendant is extremely expressive in his face. Yeah, for sure. So this defense lawyer, he just lost a big one in my mind because he's like, well, are you sure that's a standard feature on the Denali to have lighter windows in the front and tinted windows in the back? Isn't it a standard feature? And investigators like, no, that's not a standard feature. Well, have you looked on? So so the jury should be expecting a payoff on that. Like, oh, okay, defense, show us that that's a standard feature. This is a good point to now show us the Carfax and the other auto listing references that you just talked about that shows that it's a standard feature. And then he says, moving on. Oh, no, 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 no. That was so weak. He shouldn't have even brought that up, because that could have been, in my mind, that could have been a little bit of a reasonable doubt. Oh, that what may not have been the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? So Chopper, in his defense, if you're saying he acts like this is the first time he's seen the evidence, when in fact he represented himself in the beginning, so I called BS. Yeah. Well, Chopper, I think you and I are among the people who have been most looking forward to this guy defending himself. So it's a little disappointing just from a selfish perspective, purely for entertainment reasons, not for justice reasons. For justice reasons, we want legal representation by a lawyer, right? For entertainment reasons, it would have been fun to have this guy represent himself. But this lawyer probably just came onto the case about, within the last 2 months or something like that. So that's probably one of the reasons this couldn't have been a thing he followed up on. Then he shouldn't have opened the door. And now, yeah, I know. I was thinking about looking up different pro se cases that have played out on YouTube, see if they're fun, because they tend, I mean, of course we have Darrell Brooks, and I've covered Darrell Brooks and got hella views covering Darrell Brooks, but in all honesty, in some cases it's rather exploitative, to be honest with you. So anyway, let's just keep going. I've had my say about this.
To the license plate.
So if you play this clip,
Okay,
stop.
right there.
Yes.
All right. Oh,
That's on cornflower. That's another angle where you do not see a license plate on the rear of the vehicle.
okay. And this is at 1042, correct?
Yes, sir.
This is some distance from the TELLES home, correct?
It's about a block.
Now let's hit that. About a block from the TELLES home?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay,
It's about a block from Mr. Gehrman's residence.
okay.
It's roughly 5.3 miles from Mr. Tejas' residence.
All right. So we've got a red Denali about an hour and 30 minutes away from the other Denali that's captured at Piggott, that's some distance away from TELLES home, correct?
I believe this time is correct. You'd have to go to the slide before for me to confirm that. It is.
Okay. So again, about an hour and a half.
Correct.
We've got a 5.3 mile stretch. And you'll agree with me that we don't have continuous coverage, do we? We have 20 spots, give or take, over a 5.3 mile area. Fair to say?
That's correct. Again, some houses had video, some didn't. Some captured the vehicle, some didn't. Some weren't recording, some were.
And it's your testimony that this captures at 1042, correct? Give or take, assuming it's accurate.
Yes, sir.
And I'll go forward now to 1405 Winter Green.
So I believe that one also shows that there was no plate on the back of the vehicle.
Okay, and this is 17 minutes after the last one?
Yes, correct.
And this is all in the area of Mr. Gehrman's home, correct?
This is on Wintergreen, about 30 feet north of Bronze Circle where Mr. Gehrman lived.
So we've got all this time that's transpired, correct?
Minutes.
Well, if we go from 1042 to 1101, I mean, we've got some time. Almost 20 minutes.
Well, that's also the suspect out walking around the area.
Okay, we've got 20 minutes that we've gone by, correct?
Sure.
Fair to say that this video window that we've been looking at begins at about 9:10, correct? Concerning the Denali. I won't say it's Mr. Tellus' Denali, but a Denali, correct?
That's correct.
And one of the latter slides that we look at, it's about 1150, isn't it?
Approximately, yes,
That's a fair amount of time, correct?
it is.
Turning your attention to a Denali, a red Denali. Did you receive information that there was about 67 red Denalis in the Vegas area?
There's actually more than that. We had an initial listing, I believe, over 100. Of that 100, one of the Denalis listed on there was registered at Mr. Teas's residence to his wife, Mary. We further narrowed that list down to red Yukons. The first list was
Hey, Rachel.
07 to 14 Yukons. The next list that we narrowed down was 07 to 2014 red Yukons. Again, Mr. Teas's wife, Mary, at his address was listed on that list. We narrowed it down even further then to red Denalis. And again, Mr. Teas's wife, Mary, at his address was listed as an owner of that vehicle. We even searched advanced license plate readers, and Mr. Teas's vehicle was photographed by an advanced license plate reader vehicle at his residence, bearing a license plate, a Nevada commemorative plate. I believe it was 944 Adam.
Okay, and when was this?
I don't know what the exact date was, but I could get it.
Okay, so you don't have it today. I mean, I appreciate you laying out for us the steps of this investigation, but when was this capture done? When was this? Please tell us.
I could get it for you.
Okay. Have you given it to the state?
I believe everybody has the license plate reader information.
We don't know when, the origin. I mean, as you sit here today, and trust me, it's not a test, but I mean, you don't have it with you.
I do have it with me. I just don't know that my computer is going to work in here.
Okay, fair enough. Fair to say, though, there's more than one Denali, and we're talking about a 5.3 mile area.
I just want to say real quickly, I like the vibe of this witness, and I think it comes from years and years and years and years of sitting on the stand, because he was he was with the police force as a detective for years, and they have to sit on the stand a lot. So I just kind of like that he's not just he's just like all business. You know what I mean?
Area that you were focusing on, correct?
There is more than one Denali in the Clark County Valley.
At no point in time.
There's that expressive
And
face.
you agree with me that it's your theory, but at no point in time do we have any capture of a red Denali parked and there's a license plate being either removed or put upon it, correct?
There's not.
Most of the captures that we have of this red Denali, you don't really see a plate one way or the other, do you?
No, that's not correct.
Okay,
You don't see the plate as it's traveling around Mr. Gurman's neighborhood. Once it goes down Washington, you can tell that there's something on the back of the vehicle that was not there before.
and if you could direct our attention to which slide specifically you're referring to.
Yes, if you can pull up the one, it's on Washington.
Okay, so it's forward from this, looking at the time.
Correct. It's near the end.
The one that's taken from the gas station.
No,
Okay.
The one that's taken from the backyard of a residence that backs up to Washington. And then also from the Winco Foods on Washington.
Okay. Please tell me when I should stop.
Right there. So where the red box was, if you look, you can see white and darker. And I believe that is the commemorative license plate that was on the back of the vehicle.
But that's as good as we get. You're saying that that's the one that belongs to the TELLES residents, but that's it. You're drawing this conclusion based upon this image.
Oh, no. I was present for the execution of a search warrant at Mr. Tejas' residence, where several items of evidence were recovered that absolutely confirmed my belief that Mr. Tejas' vehicle was the one used in the commission of Jeffrey Gurman's murder.
And we understand that, and we understand your point of view in reference to this, but concerning this vehicle, this capture at 11:35, at 11:35 Sunspot Street at 11:35 in the morning, you're basing this conclusion concerning this commemorative plate and that this is the vehicle based upon that image.
What I'm saying is that when the vehicle was last photographed at 7200 Periwinkle, as it turned west onto Vegas Drive, the next video that I have, the next capture I have of the vehicle is as it travels westbound on Washington from Tenaya. And at that point, it appears to me that there's a license plate on the vehicle.
So you're saying there's a better image of the plate capture than this concerning these putting onto the plate than this what we were looking at?
There is no image of the license plate being put back on the vehicle.
But I'm asking concerning the image of the plate.
If you go to the next one, I believe from Winco Foods. And again, you can look at the back of that. Now you can clearly see that there is a white area on the rear lift gate.
And that's the commemorative plate that you've testified concerning.
The previous one is what I thought it was,
All
just
right.
based on the color scheme, what it looked like.
You see something there, and that's this commemorative plate that you're sure belongs to the TELLES vehicle.
No, in this video or in this clip, all I'm saying is now it appears that there is a license plate on the vehicle.
And in reference to the license plate that you're testifying is on this vehicle, you can't tell what kind of plate it is.
You cannot.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirect?
Step down and ask you for subpoena. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Witness.
Ooh, there's a sidebar. No way. A sidebar?
With anyone, including until 1 o'clock. And so during this recess, you're admonished not to discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or means, or commentary about the case. Do research, consult, express board, and move on.
Wow. So they already this, I guess we'll call this the banker's court. They start at 11 and then they take their break for lunch. They must have had morning items in the morning or something like that. So we have two choices. Okay. Two choices. One is we break now and come back after lunch at 1 o'clock, Pacific time, or I'll show you the press conference, the Matthew Perry press conference, in case some of you didn't see it. And then we'll break and come back in an hour after that press conference. It's about, this press conference I pulled up is about 11 minutes. Do you guys want to see that? Did anybody miss it? If you've already seen, I think probably most of you have seen it. I've seen it, but if you haven't seen it, I'll play it. Oh, okay. Hey, Sparkles, I'll play it for you. Of course. Here we go.
My name is Martin Estrada. I'm the United States Attorney based in Los Angeles. We're here today with our law enforcement partners to announce federal criminal charges related to the death of the actor Matthew Perry. Following Mr. Perry's death in October of last year, law enforcement, my office, and our partners represented on this stage began an in-depth, wide-ranging investigation. That investigation has revealed a broad, underground criminal network responsible for distributing large quantities of ketamine to Mr. Perry and others. This network included a live-in assistant, various go-betweens, 2 medical doctors, and a major source of drug supply known as, quote, the ketamine queen. We charged 5 defendants in this matter. These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways. In the end, these defendants were more interested in profiting off Mr. Perry than caring for his well-being. I'm going to talk about the indictment, the allegations, and the charges in more detail. On October 28, 2023, Mr. Perry was found deceased in his home. An autopsy was conducted following his death. That autopsy showed that he had died due to the acute effects of ketamine. Ketamine is a controlled substance. It has some legitimate uses, but it is also used illegally. It is used by people seeking to disassociate from reality. It can cause serious health effects, serious health problems, including loss of consciousness, including spikes in blood pressure, and including respiratory issues that can deprive the brain of oxygen. For that reason, it is a drug that must be administered by medical professionals, and the patient must be monitored closely. That did not occur here. This investigation focused on who supplied the ketamine to Mr. Perry. As many of you know, Mr. Perry struggled with addiction in the past. And on many occasions, he sought help for his addiction issues. The investigation revealed that in the fall of 2023, Mr. Perry fell back into addiction, and these defendants took advantage to profit for themselves. The 2 lead defendants in this case are defendants Salvador Plasencia and defendant Jasvin Sanya. First, I'll talk about defendant Plasencia. Defendant Plasencia was a medical doctor. He worked with another medical doctor, defendant Mark Chavez, to obtain ketamine. He then worked with Mr. Perry's live-in assistant, defendant Kenneth Iwamasa, to distribute that ketamine to Mr. Perry. Over 2 months, from September to October 2023, they distributed approximately 20 vials of ketamine to Mr. Perry in exchange for $55,000 in cash.
Unfucking believable. They fleeced this guy. They fleeced him.
Defendant Plasencia saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. He wrote in a text message in September 2023, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay."
Wow. I wonder how much this moron will pay. This is absolutely depressing, man.
He also stated in text messages that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's sole source of supply. He wrote in a text message that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's, quote, go-to for drugs. As a doctor, defendant Plasencia knew full well the danger of what he was doing. In fact, on one occasion, he injected Mr. Perry with ketamine, and he saw Mr. Perry freeze up. and his blood pressure spike. Despite that, he left additional vials of ketamine for defendant Iwamasa to administer to Mr. Perry. Of course, defendant Iwamasa had no medical training to speak of. Defendant Placentia knew what he was doing was harming Mr. Perry. He had spoken to another patient in mid-October 2023, and he told that patient that Mr. Perry was spiraling out of control with his addiction. Nonetheless, defendant Placentia continued to offer ketamine to Mr. Perry. Likewise, defendant Sonia knew what she was doing was harming defendants and also Mr. Perry. She took advantage of Mr. Perry by selling large amounts of ketamine to Mr. Perry over a 2-week period in October of 2023. She sold approximately 50 vials of ketamine for approximately $11,000 in cash. She worked with a broker, defendant Eric Fleming, and also the live-in assistant, defendant Iwamasa, to distribute this ketamine.
This is just a total and utter disregard for life. Blatant disregard for life and well-being.
Sonia and the broker, defendant Fleming, saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. In a text message, the broker wrote, quote, "I wouldn't do it."
Right now, we are in the world of take. Take. What can I take from you, you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you? Take.
If there wasn't a chance of me making some money for doing this. Defendant Sonia sold the batch of ketamine that resulted in Mr. Perry's death on October 28th. Officers later searched defendant Sonia's home. During that search, they found what amounted to a drug-selling emporium. They found 80 vials of ketamine, thousands of pills containing methamphetamine, cocaine, bottles of Xanax and other illegally obtained prescription drugs, and drug-selling paraphernalia, including scales and ledgers. As I mentioned, the defendants in this case knew what they were doing was wrong. When they'd refer to the ketamine, they used coded language. They'd refer to it using terms such as, quote, Dr. Pepper, or quote, bots, or quote, cans. Also, defendants Placentia and Chavez, as medical doctors, knew full well.
Just a couple notes here. I appreciate the educational nature of this press conference. They're helping us understand the new language that's being used by this exploitative, fraudulent doctor community, like pseudo doctor community, doctor to the stars community, right? I also appreciate the hella shade that the woman in the background is throwing at the, like she's basically throwing her disapproving stares to the perpetrators. She's like expressing how we feel over the shoulder of the U.S. attorney. I like that.
This was not the proper way to administer ketamine, and they even talked about that in their exchanges. And defendant Sonia also knew that she was doing something that caused great risk to Mr. Perry. In fact, during this investigation, we learned that several years before, in 2019, defendant Sonia had sold ketamine to another customer. That person died the same day. And a family member of that person sent a message to defendant Sonia telling her the cause of death was ketamine. Nonetheless, defendant Sonia continued selling drugs, including ketamine, including the ketamine that ultimately killed Mr. Perry.
Wow.
That other victim was a person named Cody McGlory. He died in 2019. As a result of this investigation, we have filed a drug distribution charge related to the death of Mr. McGlory.
Good.
After Mr. Perry died, these defendants tried to cover up what they had done. On October 28th, after reading news reports of Mr. Perry's death, defendant Sonia wrote a text message to defendant Fleming.
I was hoping he would say, defendant Sonia, freak the fuck out. But no, he's being professional. He's a U.S. attorney. He can't do that.
Saying, quote, delete all our messages. Likewise, after Mr. Perry's death, defendant Placentia falsified medical records and notes to try to make it look like what he was doing was legitimate. It was not. We have filed numerous federal charges against the 5 defendants. These charges include conspiracy to distribute ketamine, distribution of ketamine resulting in death, maintaining drug-involved premises for that drug-selling emporium the defendant Sonia had, altering and falsifying records related to a federal investigation for those false medical notes and records that defendant Placentia made, and multiple other drug trafficking counts. Of course, the defendants are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The penalties these defendants face are very significant. With regard to defendant Placentia, the statutory maximum sentence he faces is 120 years in federal prison. And with regard to defendant Sonia,
That's a long
the
time.
statutory maximum she faces is life imprisonment. By filing these extensive and serious charges, we are sending a clear message. If you are in the business of selling dangerous drugs, we will hold you accountable for the deaths that you cause. This is nothing new for us. Since 2022, my office has filed over 60 cases against drug dealers who've caused the death of another person. These cases are known as death resulting cases. They're labor-intensive cases, and we work with our law enforcement partners, including ones represented here today, to bring those cases. Our office is a national leader in bringing those cases. They're very important because every victim's life counts. If you are in the drug selling business and you're selling dangerous drugs, you're playing roulette with other people's lives, just like the 5 defendants here did to Mr. Perry. Defendants nowadays are on full notice that the products they sell could result in the death of another person. Therefore, if you're in the drug business, and despite these risks, you continue in the drug business, you are pushed by greed to gamble with other people's lives, be advised, we will hold you accountable. I want to thank our partners in this case, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. These investigators
They always have to say their thank yous to all the agencies, and they have to get the taxpayer acknowledgments out there. Yeah, okay, that's it. So that's
Let's go to Los Angeles.
whoop, whoop, whoop. That's the press conference. That was a press conference. It's incredibly depressing that there are pseudo doctors out there. There are still people out there, doctors to the stars, who will go out there and fleece people who are vulnerable and on the road to recovery. This is just absolutely just a complete, like I was saying earlier, we're just in a take world, and that's all I can say about it. And it's really sad. It's really sad. So thank you for joining me. And by the way, I don't know if you saw, did you see, Patricia, that I put up? It's that ketamine is a synthetic compound. So it's not derived from any natural plant. It's completely synthetic. And a few years ago, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, I started hearing about it being called Special K. It's a party drug. People use it in the party scene, in the rave scene, because the effect of it is very euphoric and also tranquilizing. So it's, but there are a number of, what number of drugs that are being introduced as treatment for PTSD and mental illness and depression in microdosages, like psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, which is ecstasy basically, and mushrooms in there, but you're supposed to do it in very controlled settings and in very micro doses, because there are definitely therapeutic benefits for very specific cases. So there's a lot of experimentation going on, and then there's a lot of exploitation of that fact. Yeah, Stacy, I agree with that. I agree with that. And I don't think that this specific exact situation happened with Amy Winehouse, but I think Amy Winehouse was exploited to death. I think she drank herself to death but it was because of exploitation. Yeah, I agree, PKC. That was encouraging to me too. That they aren't just, they're making sure that we know that this isn't just we're letting you know because it's high profile. We feel under pressure because it's high profile. That, we're pursuing this for other victims as well. Oh, Patricia, we could talk about a lot of things. Yeah, I actually advocate for it in the right settings, So anyway, I'm going to close this down and give y'all the hour, and we will come back at 1 o'clock Pacific time for the afternoon sesh of the most facially expressive defendant we've ever had, I believe, with the possible exception of Darrell Brooks, but I didn't cover that trial live. But anyway, so have a lovely break, and we will be back. We will be back. Look at all my naughty ladies in the chat. Back to Black has been, Amy Winehouse is my, what do I want to say? I have to say that she's probably my favorite female artist of all time. I have to say that. Yep. I'm going to say it. All right. I'll see you all later.